The old kettle rusted, shut last winter. I remember because I tried to make tea, and nothing came out. No whistle, no steam. Just silence. That kettle was a wedding gift from my mother 36 years ago. Same as the cracked mug with the blue flower. Same as the small garden out back, where I grew tomatoes that never ripened. My daughter Chloe used to sit on that garden wall every morning before school. Now she lives 20 minutes away in a flat with a balcony and a gym and a view of the river. She has not visited in 14 months. Not for my birthday. Not when my neighbor found me on the floor after a fall. Not when the hospital called her directly. She sent a text instead. A single line that said, "Sorry, Mum, busy, with work talk soon X." That was it. That was my daughter. The same girl I carried through 2 jobs and 3 rental evictions and one very cold winter when we had no heat for 11 days. I gave her my coat. I gave her my food. I gave her every good thing I ever had. And when I fell apart, when my body quit and my money ran out and my world got small, she did not show up. Straight up ghosted me, no cap. That is not a sad story for views. That is just my Tuesday. Let me take you back to a time before the rust and the silence. I grew up in a small town north of Liverpool. My dad drove a lorry. My mum cleaned houses for rich people who never learned her name. We were not poor in a dramatic way. We were poor in the exhausting way. The way where you wear your cousin's old clothes and pretend you like them. The way where you learn to make one meal stretch for 3 days. I left school at 16. Not because I was dumb. Because we needed money. I worked at a bakery first. Then a shop. Then a small factory that made plastic parts for cars. I met Gary at a pub called The Crown. He was loud and clumsy, and he made me laugh. We got married in a registry office with 2 witnesses and a cake from the supermarket. Our first flat was above a carpet store. You could hear the delivery vans at 5 a.m. every morning. That flat had 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen so small you could not open the oven and the fridge at the same time. Chloe was born on a Tuesday in March. She came out screaming and red and perfect. The nurse put her on my chest, and I remember thinking, I will never let this girl feel what I felt. I will never let her be cold or hungry or invisible. That promise became my whole personality. Gary worked days. I worked nights. I took a job at a care home for elderly people. 12-hour shifts. Changing sheets. Serving meals. Holding hands of people whose families never visited. I would come home at 7 a.m. just in time to make Chloe's breakfast and walk her to school. I did that for 15 years. 15 years of 4 hours of sleep. 15 years of ignoring my own back pain, my own tiredness, my own loneliness. Gary left when Chloe was 13. He said he could not live in a house where he was never the priority. He was right. Chloe was my priority. She was my only priority. I worked double shifts to send her to a decent school. I bought her a laptop with money I saved from skipping lunch for 2 years. I paid for her art classes, her music lessons, her school trips. I never said no, not once. Because saying no felt like breaking my promise. Chloe was a good kid, smart, popular. She had a way of talking that made people like her instantly. Teachers loved her. Friends adored her. I was proud, so proud. But somewhere in those years, something shifted. Chloe started seeing my struggle as her origin story. Not as my pain. As her brand. She would tell people my mum works at a care home. She would say it with a sad smile, like she was the one carrying the weight. I did not notice at first. I was too tired to notice. Too busy surviving. That is the thing about giving everything. You do not see the cost until you are the one who needs something back. The betrayal came through a LinkedIn profile. I did not even know what LinkedIn was. My neighbor Karen showed me. She said, "Margaret, did you know Chloe has a whole page about her childhood struggles?" I sat at Karen's kitchen table and watched her scroll through Chloe's profile. There it was, in black and white. Chloe's job history, Chloe's skills, and at the bottom, a section called Personal Story. She wrote, "I grew up in a low-income household where I had to be the adult from a young age. I managed the household finances while my mother worked multiple jobs. I learned resilience before I learned algebra." I read those words 3 times. Managed the household finances. She was 13 when Gary left. She did not manage anything. I paid the rent. I bought the food. I made sure the lights stayed on. Chloe did her homework and watched TV and complained about not having the right phone. That was her contribution. But on LinkedIn, she was the hero. A child who carried her broken family on her small shoulders. I did not confront her. I told myself it was just a profile. Just words, no harm. But the harm was already there. It was sitting in my chest like a cold stone. A few months later, Chloe got a job at a marketing agency. Then she started posting on social media videos about grit and hustle and overcoming adversity. In one video, she said, "I grew up with nothing. No safety net. No family support. Just me and my will to survive." I watched that video sitting on my sofa in the same flat where I had raised her. The same flat where I had slept on the floor so she could have the bed. The same flat where I had cried into a pillow so she would not hear me. And she said, "No family support." As if I did not exist. As if my double shifts were a ghost. As if the last 15 years were just empty air. I called her that night. She did not pick up. I called again. She texted saying, "Busy mom, what's up?" I typed a long message. Then I deleted it. I typed another. Deleted that too. Finally, I just wrote, "I saw your video." She replied, "Oh, that's just content, Mom. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally." That sentence ended something between us. Not with a bang. With a whisper. The months that followed were like watching a slow flood. Chloe kept posting. Each video more dramatic than the last. She made a video about being a young carer. She said she had to take care of her mentally exhausted mother from the age of 12. She said she cooked, cleaned, and managed the bills while I slept. I read the comments. Thousands of people calling her brave. Calling her a survivor. Calling her an inspiration. I wanted to scream. I was the one who worked the night shifts. I was the one who came home and made her breakfast. I was the one who never slept. But Chloe was the one getting the praise. I started having trouble sleeping. Not because of work. Because of the weight of being erased. My neighbor Karen noticed. She said, "Margaret, you look thin. Are you eating?" I lied and said yes. The truth was, I had started skipping meals again. Not because I had no money. Because I had no appetite. The food tasted like nothing. The days blurred together. My body started breaking. First my knees. Then my hands. The doctor said arthritis. He said, "You need to rest." I laughed. Rest was a luxury I had never known. I called Chloe. I told her about the arthritis. I did not ask for money. I just wanted her to listen. She sighed. That long, tired sigh that says you are a problem. She said, "Mom, I am really busy with a big project right now. Can we talk later?" Later never came. I stopped calling. Then my landlord raised the rent. £80 more a month. I could not afford it. I had been living on my pension and a small disability payment. The math did not work. I told Chloe I might lose the flat. She sent £50 via bank transfer. No message. Just £50. Like I was a charity case. Not her mother. I found a smaller place. A studio flat behind a laundrette, 1 room. A hot plate. A shared bathroom down the hall. The windows faced a brick wall. No garden. No tomatoes. No kettle that whistled. I moved everything I owned in 2 suitcases and a bin bag. Chloe did not help. She sent a text that said, "Sorry, I couldn't be there, Mum X." I did not reply. What was there to say? The rising pressure was not just financial. It was spiritual. I started going to a church nearby. Not because I was religious. Because it was warm. Because the old ladies there smiled at me. Because no one asked me for my struggle story. They just handed me tea and a biscuit and said, "Sit down, love, you look tired." One of them, a woman named Pat, became my friend. She was 82. She had outlived 2 husbands and 3 children. She said to me, "Once the only people who remember your sacrifices are the ones who made none. Everyone else forgets." I thought about Chloe, about all the videos, all the posts, all the comments calling her brave. She had built a whole career on my back. And I was sitting in a church hall drinking weak tea because I could not afford to heat my own flat. That was the real cost. Not the money. The loneliness. The feeling of being a ghost in your own life. Pat died 6 months later. Her daughter came to the funeral. A woman named Sarah. Sarah hugged me and said my mum talked about you all the time. She said you were the strongest woman she ever met. I cried at that funeral. Not for Pat. For myself. Because a stranger's daughter knew my name. But my own daughter had erased it. The discovery came from a podcast. Chloe started a podcast called Grit and Grace. The description said a raw, honest look at surviving a difficult childhood. I did not plan to listen. But Karen sent me the link. She said, "Margaret, you need to hear this." Episode 4 was called "The Year I Raised Myself." I played it on my old phone while sitting on my bed in the studio flat. Chloe's voice came through crisp and confident. She said when I was 14, my mother was absent. Not physically. Emotionally. She worked all the time. She was too tired to parent. So I had to parent myself. I had to learn everything alone. I had no guidance. No support. Just me and my hunger for a better life. I stopped the episode halfway. My hands were shaking, absent. I was absent because I was working. Because I was keeping a roof over her head. Because her father had walked out and left us with nothing. I was absent because I was exhausted from being present in every way that mattered. But on her podcast, I was the villain. The tired mother who failed her. The reason she had to struggle. The obstacle she had to overcome. I listened to the rest of the episode later that night. She talked about being hungry. She said there were days when we had no food in the house. That was a lie. There was always food. Basic food, rice, lentils, bread. Maybe not the brands she wanted. But no one went hungry. She talked about wearing second-hand clothes and being bullied at school. That was true. But she forgot to mention that I wore second-hand clothes too. That I never bought anything new for myself for 8 years. That every pound I earned went to her uniform, her books, or school trip. She forgot all of that. Or maybe she never saw it. Maybe children do not see their mothers as humans. They see them as furniture. Something that is always there. Something they stop noticing. I searched online for more. I found an interview she did with a business blog. She said my mother's struggles taught me what not to do. She said I learned that hard work without strategy is just suffering. She said I broke the cycle. The cycle. What cycle? The cycle of a mother working herself to the bone for her child. That was not a cycle to break. That was love. She called my love a mistake. Something to escape. I sat in the dark for a long time after reading that interview. My phone died. I did not charge it. I just sat, and I thought about every night shift, every skipped meal, every time I chose her over me. And I realized Chloe did not just borrow my past. She weaponized it. She turned my sacrifice into her survival story. And she made me the enemy. That was the midpoint. The moment I stopped being her mother in my own mind. I became a woman who had been robbed. And I decided I would not stay silent. I did not plan revenge. Revenge is for people with energy. I had barely enough to make tea. But I planned something else. I planned to exist out loud. In my own words. First, I started writing letters. Not to Chloe. To myself. Every morning, I sat at the small table in my studio, and I wrote one page. Not a diary, a record. I wrote down what really happened. The night shifts. The frozen winter without heat. The day I gave Chloe my last 20 pounds for a school trip and walked home in the rain because I could not afford bus fare. I wrote down the small details. The way she would leave her dirty cups on the table expecting me to wash them. The way she would roll her eyes when I asked for help. The way she never once said, "Thank you for working double shifts." I filled 3 notebooks in 2 months. The writing did not heal me, but it reminded me that I was real, that my memories were not up for debate. Second, I found my voice outside the notebooks. Pat's daughter Sarah introduced me to a small community writing group. Women my age. Most of them had been erased too. By husbands. By children. By a world that stopped seeing you after 60. We met in a church basement every Tuesday. We read our writing out loud. We cried sometimes. We laughed more. Sarah said to me, "Once Margaret, you have a story that deserves to be heard." Not for revenge. For truth. Third, I started a small blog. Sarah helped me set it up. I called it The Woman in the Corner. No photos of my face. No mention of Chloe's name. Just my memories, my words, my voice. I wrote about the care home where I worked. About the elderly woman who called me her daughter because her real daughter never visited. About the night I came home and found Chloe crying over a boy and how I held her for 2 hours, even though I had not slept in 24 hours. I wrote about the rent increases the eviction the studio flat behind the laundrette. I wrote about the church, the weak tea, the kindness of strangers. The blog had 10 readers at first, then 50, then 200. Mostly women like me. Mothers who had been turned into footnotes. They wrote comments saying thank you, saying me too, saying I thought I was alone. I did not tell Chloe about the blog. I did not need her permission to exist. The final step was the hardest. I decided to stop hiding my financial situation. I had been ashamed of the studio flat, ashamed of the shared bathroom, ashamed of the hot plate. But shame was what kept me silent. So I stopped. I told Sarah about my rent struggles. She helped me apply for a small hardship fund from the local council. I got 300 pounds, not much. Enough for a new kettle. A proper one. One that whistled. I bought it from a charity shop for 4 pounds. It was old and scratched. But it worked. The first time the steam came out, I stood there and watched it like a miracle. That kettle became my symbol. Something broken that still worked. Something old that still had heat. I was not erased. I was just waiting. Waiting to be seen by the right eyes. Not hers, mine. The confrontation happened at a coffee shop near her flat. Chloe asked to meet. She had found the blog. Someone from her work had sent her a link. She sat across from me with her expensive coat and her nervous hands. She said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were writing this?" I said, "You never asked." She said, "You made me look like a bad person." I said, "I did not make you anything. I wrote my truth. If it makes you look bad, maybe, that is not my problem." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I worked so hard to build this image, this brand, this life, and now people are asking questions. They are reading your blog and comparing it to my podcast. They are saying I lied." I looked at her. My daughter. The girl I fed at 3 a.m. The girl I walked to school in the rain. The girl I gave everything to. And I felt something strange. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a tired sense of clarity. I said, "Chloe, you did not lie. You told a version. A version where you were the hero and I was the problem. But the real story is that I broke my body for you. I missed my own youth for you. I gave you every good thing I ever had. And you took all of it and turned it into a resume. A resume for a life you built while I was still standing in the background waiting for you to say thank you." She started crying. Real tears, not podcast tears. She said, "I didn't know you felt this way." I said, "You never looked. That is the difference between us. I spent 30 years looking at you. You spent 30 years looking at yourself." She said, "What do you want me to do? Delete everything? Apologize on Instagram?" I said, "I do not want an apology. Apologies are cheap. I want you to see me, not as a character in your story, as a woman who is still here, still alive, still hurting, still worthy of being seen." She reached across the table and held my hand. Her hand was soft. My hand was rough. The same hands that had washed her clothes for 20 years. She said, "Mom, I am so sorry." I said, "Sorry is a feeling. Action is proof. If you want to fix this, you do not need a podcast episode. You need to show up. Show up to my studio flat. Show up to my church. Show up to my life. Not when it's convenient. When it's hard." She nodded. She did not promise anything. She just nodded. I finished my tea. I stood up. I said, "The door is open, Chloe. But you have to walk through it. Not because of guilt. Because of love. Real love. The kind that sees the other person. Not the kind that uses them." Then I walked out. I did not look back. I did not need to. I had already said everything that mattered. That was 1 year ago. Chloe comes by now. Not every week, but often enough. She brings groceries. She sits on my bed because there is only one chair. She drinks tea from my old mug, the cracked one with the blue flower. She does not talk about her brand or her podcast. She asks about my knees, about my friend Sarah, about the church. She listens, really listens. She has not made a public apology. I did not ask for one. Some things do not need an audience. Some things just need two people in a small room being honest. I still write. The blog is still there. More people read it now. Women from all over. Mothers who were erased. Daughters who want to do better. I reply to every message. I tell them the same thing I tell myself. You are not invisible. You are just waiting for the right eyes. The ones that see the whole picture. Not just the parts they can use. My kettle whistles every morning now. The new old one from the charity shop. I make my tea. I sit by the window. The one that faces the brick wall. I do not see much, but I see the light change. Morning to noon to evening. And I think about how long it took me to understand this one truth. Giving everything to someone does not guarantee they will keep you. but keeping yourself does. I am Margaret. I worked double shifts. I raised a daughter. I was erased. And then I wrote myself back into existence. Not with anger. With a pen. With a kettle. With a small room behind a laundrette. That is not a sad ending. That is a real one. If this real life story hit you somewhere honest, please like and subscribe. We share quiet, emotional stories here. No filters. No fake hustle. Just truth. Share this with someone who taught you what love looks like.